The audacity, the sheer lack of respect, the blatant disregard for everything this business stands for was on full display when Bronson Reed and Bron Breakker unleashed what can only be described as one of the most savage, calculated, and shocking attacks in WWE history, and Triple H, a man who has seen every kind of brutality this industry can produce, was left absolutely furious and shaken to his core. Because what unfolded was not just another storyline beatdown, it was a deliberate attempt to assassinate the tribal chief and dismantle the foundation that Roman Reigns has built over the last 3 years, an empire that elevated WWE to heights unseen in modern times. And when that empire was threatened, the entire WWE universe felt the tremors, because this wasn't just about one man, it was about the entire direction of professional wrestling itself being thrown into chaos. Triple H, known for his calculated composure and his ability to separate business from emotion, reportedly went absolutely ballistic when he saw the replay, smashing his headset, storming out of the production meeting, and screaming at officials about how something so barbaric could have been allowed to happen on his watch. And those close to the situation say that for the first time in his executive career, the game looked as though he had lost complete control of his own kingdom, his locker room, suddenly resembling a war zone where respect, order, and professionalism had been obliterated in a matter of minutes. Let's not sugarcoat this or let the mainstream media sanitize it, because Roman Reigns wasn't just attacked, he was ambushed, cornered, and left unconscious by a premeditated assault that lasted over 15 minutes. 15 excruciating minutes where a 300-pound monster in Bronson Reed crushed him with unrelenting brutality, while the genetically gifted but dangerously arrogant Bron Breakker unleashed a fury that made him look more like a wild animal than a superstar. And the result was the head of the table laid out in a pool of blood, motionless, requiring immediate medical attention, a sight that none of us thought we'd ever see. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment rage. It wasn't about competition gone too far. This was carefully planned with military precision, reports confirming that Reed and Breakker had studied Roman's travel schedule, identified when he would be vulnerable, and executed their plan with the kind of detail you would expect from a criminal conspiracy rather than a wrestling rivalry. And that is why the shockwaves were so strong. Because if the company's biggest star, the man who conquered Brock Lesnar, survived the Undertaker's streak, and dominated every single challenger, could be ambushed and nearly destroyed in such a way, then what does that say about the safety of every other superstar in the WWE locker room? Triple H arrived at the scene too late, and what he saw will haunt him forever. Roman Reigns unconscious, bleeding, gasping for breath, and looking weaker than anyone had ever seen him since he first took up the mantle of tribal chief. And in that moment, even the game, the cerebral assassin himself, felt powerless, staring at the broken body of the man who carried the entire company on his back, knowing that something irreversible had just happened. And as if the physical destruction wasn't enough, the psychological warfare continued immediately after, because Bronson Reed had the audacity to stand over Roman's motionless body, look into the hard camera, and snarl words so venomous WWE has tried to erase them from their broadcasts, shouting that Roman built his empire on politics and favoritism, that real power comes from raw destruction, and that the so-called head of the table was nothing more than a fraud propped up by corporate hands. While Breakker smirked arrogantly, flexing his muscles, and strutting around the ring like he had just conquered the world, his face dripping with smug pride as though he had earned something when in reality he had shown himself to be nothing more than a cowardly opportunist. The disrespect was so overwhelming that hardened veterans backstage, men and women who have seen decades of blood, sweat, and betrayal, called it the most classless and disgusting display they had ever witnessed, and it forced Triple H to do something he had never done before. He called an immediate emergency meeting with every single superstar on the roster, a meeting that insiders now describe as absolute chaos. Because instead of calming the storm, it ignited more fury, with accusations flying across the room, shouting matches breaking out, and the locker room suddenly looking like a powder keg ready to explode. Seth Rollins, Roman's brother-in-arms from The Shield, was so enraged that he reportedly had to be restrained by multiple people from storming out of the meeting to find Reed and Breakker himself, screaming, "You want to attack my brother when he's down? Then you'll go through me first." And insiders confirmed that Rollins was ready to throw away his own championship opportunities just to exact revenge, a measure of how deeply personal this had become. But the revelations kept coming, because now multiple wrestlers are confirming that Reed and Breakker had been planning this for weeks, mapping out every move and waiting for the moment when the tribal chief would be most exposed, which makes this not just an attack, but a conspiracy, a betrayal of the locker room code that every wrestler is supposed to honor. Drew McIntyre, never one to hold his tongue, openly questioned Triple H's leadership, saying Hunter had lost control of the asylum, and pointed out that if two superstars could orchestrate such a vicious ambush under his nose, then something far more dangerous was brewing behind the scenes, something that threatened the very integrity of WWE itself. And if all of that wasn't enough to pour gasoline on the fire, Bronson Reed took to social media hours after the attack while Roman lay in a hospital bed with stitches and CT scans, posting cryptic, arrogant messages about making an impact and showing what real dominance looks like, showing absolutely zero remorse for potentially ending another man's career, while Breakker doubled down with a video of himself working out, flexing, and bragging about how the weak will always fall to the strong. A slap in the face not only to Roman but to every fan who has ever respected this business. Legends of the game were quick to respond, with Stone Cold Steve Austin calling them cowards and reminding the world that real men settle differences face to face, while The Rock, Roman's cousin, broke his silence to declare that family means everything and that what happened to his blood would not go unanswered, promising consequences that sent chills through the entire WWE universe. Triple H's handling of the fallout, however, showed why he is still the master of the game, because instead of suspending them immediately and risking turning them into martyrs, he fed their arrogance by giving them exactly what they thought they wanted, high-profile matches, but under conditions so brutal and strategically designed that they could not possibly escape humiliation. Reed was booked into relentless handicap matches where he was picked apart by teams hand-selected by Triple H, while Breakker was forced into clashes with veterans who took great pleasure in dismantling him without mercy, and then came the ultimate twist, both men being promised matches with Roman Reigns himself, but with referees personally chosen by the tribal chief, ensuring that Eve